So, now that you've done your first homework and you have kind of a sense of where you are, where you came from, let's explore a little history, shall we? This course is, of course, Canadian history from World War I to the present. And, of course, where do we start? Where you left off in grade 8, sunshine, World War I. So, I am going to read this textbook, chapter, word by word, for this entire 3-hour YouTube video. Shall we? Don't feel like that? Okay, let's go to the map. Whoa. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, World War I. First of all, what's that behind me? That's a map of Europe. I thought this was Canadian history, sir. It is, but you know what? Strangely enough, what we feel as a sense of a nation and our nationalism and our nation building actually took place across the pond here in Europe. The events of 1914 have shaped this country immeasurably. Now, what was Canada in 1914? 8 million people? 10 million square kilometers? Almost 10 million square kilometers. I'm doing that. What's the math? How many? Anyway, it's a lot of space and very few people. We go from Newfoundland all the way to British Columbia. I mean, this is a vast land. And there are pockets, obviously. Are we a cohesive nation? Well, July 1st, 1867, as you know from grade 7, we became a nation. Or did we? Perhaps it was the events after 1914 that truly made us a nation. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see behind me, this is a map of World War I Europe. This is not a map of 2020 Europe. Most of the countries, basically, they're similar as they were, but you'll need to see some startling differences. First, you have Austria-Hungary over that big orange blob over there. And then, of course, you have France, Germany. It's like being a weather person. I have to point in the opposite direction. Germany, you'll notice there are certain things missing. What are they? Well, if you do know your geography, ladies and gentlemen, there is a bunch of countries around here that haven't existed. Oh, they're there. Where'd the people go? They're there. I mean, the Czechs, the Slovaks, the Hungarians, the Poles, the Latvians, the Lithuanians, the Estonians, they're all there. And they're in these little pockets, these groups. They speak their language. They dress in their national custom. They eat their awesome food. But they're a part of a different country, and they are angry. And there's this whole movement that is happening here, clamoring for their own nation state. They don't like being controlled by these big blotchy countries like Austria-Hungary. They want their own place. They want their own country. They want their own flag. I mean, who can blame them? Our story begins, kids, in this blob that is Austria-Hungary. Capital, Vienna. Of course, the people that ruled Austria-Hungary, the Austrians, had ruled there for 300 years. They were bent on keeping these little minorities silent and quiet. And our story, ladies and begins actually in southern Austria-Hungary, beside the country of Serbia, in a town called Sarajevo. So in Sarajevo lived many Serbs, and the Serbs of Sarajevo wanted Sarajevo to be back with their home country of Serbia. You see, they were incredibly loyal to that country. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called nationalism. And it's our first cause of the First World War, nationalism. These people of Sarajevo, these Serbs, had a group, and their group was called the Black Hand. The Black Hand was a terrorist group, or it was deemed a terrorist group by the people in Vienna. They didn't like them at all because, of course, it meant that their power was being eroded by the Black Hand. Austria-Hungary was ruled by this dude. That's right. His name was Franz Joseph. Look at those whiskers on that guy. Unbelievable. And of course, Franz Joseph was hell-bent in keeping people in line in his beautiful Austria-Hungary. But on June 28, 1914, Franz Joseph's nephew, that's Franz Ferdinand, went for a visit to Sarajevo. And in Sarajevo, well, is where he and his wife, Archduchess Sophia, met their end. So Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Archduchess Sophia, decided to take a little joyride down to Sarajevo, and it happened to be the day Serb National Day, of all days. That is not a good place. It is not a good time to go when you're not very welcome by the local population. Anyways, remember in your first homework assignment I said you are a part of Canadian history to find out the stories of your family? Well, this wonderful young man, his name is Alex, and that's his home back in Serbia. Well, if you can see the house there, it just happens to be the house that was next door, that's right, you guessed it, to that guy. Who is that guy, you said? His name is Gavrilo Princip, and he's a part of this so-called terrorist organization, the Black Hand. And it's Gavrilo, 19-year-old Gavrilo, that will pull the trigger and kill Archduke Ferdinand and his wife, Archduchess Sophia. It is a turning point, ladies and gentlemen, in history.